Do you still remember those noisy streets? The blinding lights and the two lost souls struggling to survive in the cold New York? For many decades, Midnight Cowboy has become an icon, a story that the whole world cannot forget. But behind those scenes, there is a harsher truth. Some rose to legend. Some disappeared. And some lives took directions no one could have predicted. Today, let's explore with us the little-known stories and look back at their legacies. Jon Voight as Joe Buck. Jon Voight was born on December 29, 1938 in Yonkers, New York, USA. At the age of 30, he stepped into the role of Joe Buck in Midnight Cowboy in 1969, a naive Texas cowboy carrying a wide-brimmed hat, flashy clothes, and an almost blind belief that his looks and boldness could buy him a life of wealth in the harsh city of New York. The mix of innocence and despair in his eyes, along with the way he portrayed a lost man in the cold metropolis, quickly turned Joe Buck into one of the most tragic characters in American cinema, while propelling Jon Voight from an unknown name to a star that all of Hollywood noticed, earning him an Oscar nomination and placing him straight into the ranks of the new faces of a turbulent era in film. Fame came fast, almost too fast. Opportunities followed, one after another. And just a few years later, he reached the peak with the Oscar Gold for Coming Home in 1978, building a career that spanned decades with a series of major roles, from deeply introspective characters to powerful screen icons. But behind that spotlight, his personal life began to show cracks that were hard to repair. He married actress Marqueline Bertrand, with whom he had 2 children, including Angelina Jolie, but the marriage quickly fell apart, leaving behind a fractured family and a years-long distance between him and his daughter, turning the father-daughter relationship into a painful story that the whole world could witness. Controversies began to erupt. Jon Voight did not choose silence, but stepped straight into fierce political confrontations, making strong statements that caused deep divisions, long-lasting rifts that smoldered and gradually eroded the image he had built over many years. As of 2026, at the age of 87, Jon Voight has an estimated net worth of around $55 million. Dustin Hoffman is Enrico Razzo Rizzo. Dustin Hoffman was born on August 8, 1937 in Los Angeles, California, USA. At the age of 31, he appeared in Midnight Cowboy in 1969 as Razzo Rizzo, a sickly con man limping through the cold streets of New York, carrying his skinny frame, ragged coat, and a fragile dream of a warm place called Florida. His raspy voice, eyes that were both cunning and desperate, and his unsteady gait quickly turned Razzo into one of the most tragic characters in American cinema, while propelling Dustin Hoffman from an actor considered not star material to the center of an acting revolution. That role earned him an Oscar nomination and opened the door to the heights of Hollywood. But the path leading to that moment was not easy at all. Before achieving fame, Hoffman had to endure years of hardship, constantly being rejected because his appearance did not fit the leading man standards of the time, doing odd jobs, going to hopeless auditions, and facing doubt from people in the industry. When success finally came, it arrived like a storm. He quickly solidified his position with a series of outstanding performances, winning 2 Oscar statuettes for Kramer vs. Carl, Kramer and Rain Man, building a career that spanned decades with a solid reputation and respect from professionals, bringing his estimated net worth to around $100 million as of 2026. But behind that spotlight, his personal life began to show cracks. He went through his first marriage to Ann Byrne, which ended in separation, before entering his second marriage to Lisa Gottsigan, building a large family with 6 children. But he could not escape the prolonged pressures of fame and time. Then, in later years, another shadow began to fall. In 2017, Dustin Hoffman was accused by several women of past misconduct. The accusations quickly spread, pulling him into the center of a global controversy, forcing him to apologize for some behaviors while denying many other details, sharply dividing his image in the eyes of the public. Not only was his reputation tested, his health also once stood in danger. In 2013, he was diagnosed with cancer and had to undergo surgery, an incident that worried the whole world, though he was later confirmed to have recovered. Ratso Rizzo once lived in a world where hope always walked hand in hand with despair. And Dustin Hoffman, even though he reached heights that many dream of, still had to face the dark sides, where success was not enough to protect a person from controversies, wounds, and pressures that lasted throughout life. As of 2026, at the age of 88, Dustin Hoffman has an estimated net worth of around 100 million US. Sylvia Miles as Cass. Sylvia Miles was born on September 9, 1924 in New York, USA. At the age of 45, she appeared in Midnight Cowboy in 1969 as Cass, a wealthy, vain woman living amid lavish parties but hiding an unmaskable loneliness deep inside. With only a few minutes on screen, her distracted eyes, voice that was both dismissive and empty, and the way she portrayed a disoriented person in the upper class made the character of Cass haunting, earning Sylvia Miles a nomination for Best Supporting Actress Oscar. It was one of the shortest but most powerful performances in film history, enough to etch her name into audiences' memories, but not enough to completely change the fate of her career. Fame came quickly, but it did not stay long. Before and after Midnight Cowboy, Sylvia Miles continued to appear in many films, notably Farewell, My Lovely in 1975, where she received another Oscar nomination, reinforcing her image as an actress who could steal a scene in just a few minutes. But Hollywood did not grant her the position of an A-list star. She was kept in supporting roles, eccentric characters, sharp women who were never the center. Sylvia Miles's personal life also had many ups and downs. She married William Miles, but the marriage ended in divorce, and afterward she lived almost alone, becoming a familiar face in New York social life, appearing at events, parties, premieres, always standing out, always different, but also always carrying a sense of being lost. Her media image gradually became associated with an eccentric, outspoken, sometimes unpredictable woman. In her final years, her health declined. Sylvia Miles passed away on June 12, 2019 in New York, at the age of 94. At the time of her death, her net worth was estimated at around $2 million US. John McGiver as Mr. O'Daniel. John McGiver was born on November 5, 1913, in New York, USA. At the age of 56, he appeared in Midnight Cowboy in 1969 as Mr. O'Daniel, a polite but helpless middle-class man, trapped between suppressed desires and an unhideable weakness. In a short but haunting segment, he portrayed a man who seemed respectable but was broken from within. An image reflecting the dark side of American society at that time, John McGiver turned a small character into a painful slice of reality. But to reach that moment, his path was not easy. Unlike many actors of his time, McGiver did not enter Hollywood early. He had served in the United States Army during World War II, then pursued acting, starting from the stage before gradually moving to television and film. His success came late, and was always tied to supporting roles, intellectual men, powerful characters, familiar faces but rarely named. He appeared in over 100 films and television shows, building a steady career but never truly stepping into the ranks of stars. It was a quiet form of tragedy when a talent was trusted and used but never placed in the center. His personal life was more stable than many in the industry. He married Ruth Schmigelski and had 10 children. A large family, a life that seemed complete and solid. But behind that stability was still the pressure of a man who had to bear great responsibilities, who had to work non-stop to maintain his career and support his family. On September 9, 1975, John McGiver passed away from a heart attack at his home in Fulton, New York, at the age of 61. Brenda Vexaro as Shirley. Brenda Vexaro was born on November 18, 1939 in Brooklyn, New York, USA. At around the age of 30, she appeared in Midnight Cowboy in 1969 as Shirley, the woman tied to the chaotic and deeply wounded memories of Joe Buck, a character who did not appear much but carried profound psychological weight, like a quiet cut revealing the distorted past behind the protagonist's naive appearance. With unstable eyes, fragility mixed with chaos and a sense of danger hidden under the allure. Brenda Vaccaro helped create a darker layer of meaning for the film, where memories were no longer a refuge but became the source of pain. But the journey that brought her to the big screen was not smooth. Before gaining wide recognition, Vaccaro had to endure years of struggle on Broadway stages, where she gradually proved herself through talent rather than looks. In an era when Hollywood favored perfect faces over character actors, success began to come when she received an Oscar nomination for Once Is Not Enough in 1975, along with many other major awards, making her one of the most respected actresses of her generation, with a career spanning over half a century. But like many others, the stage lights were not enough to hide the cracks in her personal life. Brenda Vaccaro went through multiple marriages, relationships that came and went, times of seeking stability that did not last, until she married Guy Hector in 1986 and maintained that marriage longer than any previous relationship. Before that, she had a notable romance with Michael Douglas, a relationship that brought media attention but did not lead to a lasting end. She is often remembered as an outstanding actress, a familiar face, a respected talent, but rarely as a leading icon. In later years, Brenda Vaccaro continued to work, appearing in film and television. As of 2026, at the age of 86, she still occasionally appears in public, carrying the image of a veteran actress who has gone through many decades of Hollywood's changes. Her net worth is estimated at around $4 million US. Ruth White as Sally Buck. Ruth White was born on April 24, 1914, in Perth Amboy, New Jersey, USA. At the age of 55, she appeared in Midnight Cowboy in 1969 as Sally Buck, the grandmother in Joe Buck's Haunting Memories, a character who did not appear much but carried special emotional weight, like a ghost from the past always lurking behind the present, with cold eyes, distance, and an indescribable sense of unease. Ruth White turned Sally Buck into a core part of the protagonist's psychological tragedy, where childhood was not a refuge but the origin of trauma. Ruth White began her career on stage, where she gradually built a reputation through real talent, winning major awards such as the Emmy, Obie, and a Tony nomination, becoming one of the most respected stage actresses of her time. Behind that respectable career was a quiet and private personal life. Ruth White never married, had no family in the traditional sense, and devoted most of her life to the stage and acting, living in a world where work was almost everything. And then tragedy struck without warning. In 1969, the same year Midnight Cowboy was released and became one of the most important films in American cinema. Ruth White passed away on December 3 from cancer, closing her life at the age of 55 while her career was still at its peak. Jennifer Salt as Crazy Annie. Jennifer Salt was born on September 4, 1944, in Los Angeles, California, USA, the daughter of screenwriter Waldo Salt, who wrote the script for Midnight Cowboy. At the age of 25, she appeared in the 1969 film as Crazy Annie, a rebellious hippie girl living amid chaotic parties and the exploding counterculture world, carrying freedom, wildness, but also full of instability. With messy hair, defiant eyes, and an almost uncontrolled performance, Jennifer Salt turned Crazy Annie into a realistic slice of young America at that time, where freedom and disorientation existed side by side. The role was not long, but it was enough to leave an impression in a film full of marginalized characters. However, her path was not like that of other stars. Born into an artistic family but tied to Hollywood's traumas, Jennifer Salt grew up in the shadow of the blacklist era, when her father was pushed out of the industry due to political suspicions, a silent wound that affected the whole family and the way she viewed the world. Entering acting, she quickly gained attention through roles in the 1970s, especially in the series Soap, where she became a familiar face on television. As the Hollywood wave changed, Jennifer Salt gradually moved away from the screen, not because of clear failure, but because of a quiet shift, where opportunities became fewer and her position in the industry grew dimmer. She married David Greenberg and had one child, but the marriage ended in divorce, leaving behind an incomplete family. After stepping away from acting, Jennifer Salt turned to screenwriting and producing, participating in television projects such as Nip Tuck and American Horror Story. In later years, she lived more privately, staying away from the spotlight. As of 2026, at the age of 81, Jennifer Salt's estimated net worth is around 10 million US dollars. Bob Balaban as young student. Bob Balaban was born on August 16, 1945 in Chicago, Illinois, USA. At the age of 24, he appeared in Midnight Cowboy in 1969 in a small role named Young Student, a young client in the distorted world that Joe Buck stepped into. A fleeting character, but one that helped expose the diversity, deviance, and full of contradictions in urban society at that time. Born into a family with artistic and production traditions, he had a more favorable foundation than many others. But that did not mean the path to stardom was paved for him. He did not possess the look of a typical leading man, did not carry the charisma of a box office icon, and therefore he was quickly defined as a supporting actor, someone who appeared to complete other people's stories. From Midnight Cowboy, he continued to appear in many famous films such as Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Gosford Park, and a series of television projects, gradually building a career spanning decades as an actor, director, and producer. He was nominated for an Oscar as a producer, recognized in professional circles, but his fame always stopped at a clear boundary: known but not a star, respected but not an icon. He married Lynn Grossman in 1977 and maintained a long marriage with 2 children, a family with little scandal and little turmoil. He once admitted that he was the type of actor audiences recognize but don't remember the name, a statement that accurately reflected his position in Hollywood. In later years, Bob Balaban continued to work steadily, appearing in film, television, and theater. As of 2026, at the age of 80, his net worth is estimated at around 20 million US dollars. Barnard Hughes as Townie. Barnard Hughes was born on July 16, 1915 in Bedford Hills, New York, USA. At the age of 54, he appeared in Midnight Cowboy in 1969 as Townie, a man in Joe Buck's past memories, a character who did not take up much screen time but contributed to creating distorted, dark, and haunting layers of memory in the protagonist's psychology. With a rugged face, heavy eyes, and a quiet but powerful performance, Barnard Hughes turned a small role into an important piece in the film's portrait of psychological turmoil, where the past never really disappeared but always weighed heavily on the present. But his path to acting did not begin with bright stage lights. He did various jobs before pursuing art, served in the United States Army, then gradually stepped into theater, where he had to spend many years before being recognized. Barnard Hughes's success came late, very late. He did not become a star when young, did not have breakout roles that immediately propelled him to the top, but had to wait until middle age, even old age, before truly being seen as a great actor. He won a Tony Award, won an Emmy Award, and built a solid career on stage, television, and film, becoming one of the most respected veteran actors. He married actress Helen Stenborg in 1950 and maintained that marriage for over half a century, with 2 children, a stable family rarely seen in the volatile entertainment industry. On July 11, 2006, just a few days before his 91st birthday, Barnard Hughes passed away, closing a long, steadfast, and dedicated life. Gilman Rankin as Woodsy Niles. Gilman Rankin was born on April 17, 1911 in Boston, Massachusetts, USA. At the age of 58, he appeared in Midnight Cowboy in 1969 as Woodsy Niles, a fleeting, supporting character in the chaotic world that Joe Buck got lost in, a person from the artistic and entertainment class, helping to thicken the portrait of a New York full of strange personalities, where the line between success and decline was always fragile. The role was not big, had no explosive moments, but like many other appearances in his career, it brought a sense of authenticity, naturalness, and no need for showiness. But Gilman Rankin's path to film was not one of glamour. He began his career from the stage and gradually moved to television in a period when the entertainment industry was expanding, appearing in a series of shows, especially Western series like Tombstone Territory, where he was recognized by audiences as a familiar face, an actor who could take on many different types of characters. He worked steadily and persistently, with a career stretching from the late 1940s to the mid-1970s, but never truly stepped into the ranks of stars. On October 31st, 1993, Gilman Rankin passed away in California at the age of 82. They once stepped onto the screen with bright lights, rounds of applause, and dreams that seemed never to fade. But time does not keep anyone. Midnight Cowboy is not only the story of Joe Buck and Ratso Rizzo, but also a mirror reflecting the lives of the people who created it. The big stars, the supporting actors, the fleeting faces, all carried their own dreams, their own cracks, and very different endings. Some reached the peak only to face controversy and loneliness. Some spent their whole lives standing on the edge of the light, never truly named. Some left too early, when the world had not yet had time to see their full value. And there are also those who are still there, quietly continuing to live with a past they cannot change. Hollywood can create legends, but it also leaves gaps that cannot be filled. And after all, what remains is not only the films, but the lives that once shone, once shattered, and can never return to how they were before. If you find this story memorable, don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss the haunting journeys behind the screen. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next stories.